The night Chloe finally said it, I had a white shirt in my hands and a date waiting downtown, and I remember thinking my whole life was about to split in two. One version where I walked out the door like nothing happened, and another where I stayed and faced something I never knew was right in front of me. I didn't know which one would ruin me. I just knew I could hear my own heartbeat like it was trying to warn me. My name's Eli. I'm 27, and I'm an electrical technician living in a quiet suburb just outside Denver, Colorado. It's not some dream job, but it's steady. It pays the bills, keeps my small second-floor apartment warm in winter, and gives me enough room to breathe. I like routines. I like knowing what tomorrow looks like. My place is basic, creaky hardwood floors, a couch I got off Craigslist, and a coffee maker that sounds like it's choking every morning but still does its job. I've lived here long enough to know the building's sounds by heart. The hum of someone's AC unit, the clatter of the mailboxes, the smell of laundry from the basement drifting up the stairwell. Right next door is Chloe. She's 24, a med school student in her final year, always running on too little sleep and too much caffeine. We've been neighbors for almost 2 years, and we've got this easy, friendly thing that never felt like it needed a label. We'd wave when we crossed paths at the mailboxes. We'd complain about the weather like it was our shared hobby. Sometimes we'd split a pizza order when neither of us wanted to cook. On slow Sunday nights, she'd come over with a blanket and pick an old rom-com like she was hosting movie night on purpose. She'd quote lines before the actor said them, then look at me like she was waiting for me to laugh. And I always did. It was comfortable, safe. Like she was part of the furniture in my life, in the best way. Chloe was just Chloe. My neighbor. My friend, the person I could knock on the door of if my power flickered or if I ran out of salt. I never thought much beyond that, because thinking beyond that would have meant noticing things I wasn't ready to notice. Then, last Friday night hit. It was around 7, and I was getting ready for a date, my first real one in months. Her name was Haley. I met her at a friend's barbecue 3 weeks earlier, and she had this quick laugh and a warm vibe that made it easy to talk to her. She was a graphic designer, and she told stories the way people do when they're excited about their life. I liked that. I wanted to like that. But standing in front of my mirror, I didn't feel confident. I felt like a guy trying to pretend he knew what he was doing. I held up 3 shirts like I was auditioning for a role. A crisp white one, a charcoal gray one, and a navy button-down that looked like it belonged on someone with a 5-year plan. None of them felt right. I swapped them out, held them to my chest, muttered about how I was overthinking. Dating was hard enough without a wardrobe crisis. That's when I thought of Chloe. She had this knack for style, always knowing what looked good without trying. She'd helped me pick a jacket for a work event once, and I got compliments all night. So I grabbed the shirt, stepped into the hallway, and knocked on her door like it was the most normal thing in the world. I could hear her TV through the wall, some medical drama she was probably half watching while studying. There was a shuffle, a pause. Then the door swung open. Chloe stood there in an oversized gray hoodie, sleeves swallowing her hands. Her dark hair was piled into a messy bun, and she was holding a mug of tea. She looked tired in that way that made you want to tell her to sit down and breathe. Still, when she saw me, her face softened. "Hey, Eli," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "What's up?" I grinned and lifted the shirts like some awkward fashion show contestant. "Need your expertise." "Got a date tonight, and I'm bombing the wardrobe part." Her eyes blinked once, just once, but something in her expression froze for a split second, like I'd said something heavier than I meant to. She stepped back and motioned me inside. "All right," she said, voice steady. "Let's see what you're working with." Her apartment was the mirror of mine, but warmer. Books stacked on the coffee table. A blanket draped over the couch. The faint smell of lavender from a candle she must have just blown out. It felt like her, like calm, even when she was stressed. I laid the shirts out on her couch and tried to laugh off my nerves. So, white, gray, or navy, what's the least likely to make me look like I'm trying too hard? Chloe set her mug down and sat cross-legged on the floor, studying the shirts like they were a puzzle. She ran her fingers over the white one, her brows knitting together. "The white one," she said finally, voice softer than usual. "It makes you look honest, clean." I chuckled, picking it up. "Honest, huh? That's good, right? First date vibes." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked away, eyes dropping to the gray shirt. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. Depends who you're trying to impress. There was something in her tone, not sharp but heavy, like she was holding back words that had teeth. I tried to keep it light. Well, Haley seems cool. Figure I should at least look like I've got my life together. Chloe didn't laugh, didn't even smile. She stared at the shirts, fingers tracing the hem of the white one like she was grounding herself. The room felt different now, thicker, like the air between us had been hiding something, and it was finally waking up. I opened my mouth to say something, anything to break the silence, but she beat me to it. "You're blind, Eli," she whispered. I froze. "What?" Her head lifted slowly. Her eyes were shining, not with anger, but with something that looked like pain and courage fighting in the same space. "You're blind," she said again, louder this time, voice cracking just enough to make my chest tighten. "Why don't you see I love you?" For a second I couldn't breathe. The white shirt in my hands felt heavier, like it was filled with her words. My brain shorted out, like someone had cut the power, and I was still trying to make the lights turn on. Chloe stood up fast, face flushed, like she regretted it the moment it left her mouth. She walked to the door and pulled it open wide. "Forget it," she said, voice barely above a breath. "Just go." I didn't move, my mouth open, but nothing came out. Her eyes dropped to the floor, her hand gripping the doorknob so tight her knuckles were white. "Eli," she said, sharper now, but her voice broke at the end. "Go." And that was the moment my simple, predictable life stopped being simple. Because the door was open, and I had a date waiting, and the person I'd been leaning on for 2 years was standing there with her heart in her hands. And I had no idea what I was about to do next. I wish I could tell you I stayed. That I dropped the shirts, shut the door, and wrapped Chloe up in my arms like it was the most obvious thing in the world. But the truth is, I stood there like an idiot, shocked and silent, while she held the door open like she was trying to push me out of her life before I could say something that made it worse. So I left. I walked back to my apartment with the white shirt draped over my arm, and every step felt like I was walking away from something I didn't understand yet. My hands were shaking when I set the shirts on my couch. My heart wasn't calm. It was loud, jumping like a loose wire sparking behind the wall. 3 words kept hitting me in the chest. "I love you, Chloe, my neighbor, my friend." As the girl who knew I hated olives and still tried to sneak them onto my slice just to mess with me. The girl who always looked tired, but still showed up with a blanket and a movie when she could tell I'd had a rough week. She loved me. I stared at the clock. 7:15. My date with Haley was in 45 minutes. I should have canceled. I should have knocked again. I should have done 1,000 things that made more sense than what I actually did. But I was panicking, and panicking makes you cling to routine. It makes you grab the thing you already planned, because it feels safer than facing the thing that just exploded in your face. So I put on the white shirt, because Chloe said it made me look honest. And I drove to Denver with her words sitting in the passenger seat like a ghost. The restaurant was one of those trendy places with exposed brick, dim lights, and drinks that came in fancy glasses for no reason. Haley was already there, sitting by the window. When she waved, her smile was easy and bright, like she had no idea my head was spinning. "Eli," she said, standing to hug me, "you look really good." My stomach tightened, and for half a second I almost laughed because it felt like the world was mocking me. "Thanks," I said. "You look great, too." We sat, ordered drinks, and tried to be normal. Haley talked about her work, how a client kept changing their mind about a logo. And I told her about a job where a homeowner kept flipping switches while I was trying to test a line. She laughed, and I laughed with her, but it felt forced, like I was acting, because my mind kept drifting, to Chloe's eyes, to the way her voice cracked, to her hand gripping the doorknob like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. Haley asked a question, and I realized I hadn't heard it. "You okay?" she said, tilting her head. "You seem a little far away." Quote. I forced a smile. "Yeah, sorry, long week." She nodded, but her eyes stayed on me, like she didn't buy it. The food came, and I tried to focus, but Every time Haley smiled, I kept picturing Chloe not smiling at all. Halfway through dinner, Haley reached across the table and touched my hand. It was a small, kind gesture. It should have made me feel something. Instead, it made me feel guilty. Because my mind didn't go to Haley. It went to the girl next door, sitting on her couch with my shirts laid out like evidence. I pulled my hand back gently, pretending I needed my drink. Haley's smile faded just a little. We made it through the night, but it never clicked the way I wanted it to. When we stood outside the restaurant, the air was cool, and the city lights reflected off car windows like tiny stars. Haley hugged me again. "Text me when you get home," she said. "I had fun." My throat felt tight. "Yeah, I will." She walked to her car, and I watched her drive off feeling like the worst kind of guy. Haley didn't do anything wrong. She showed up. She was present. She was excited to be there. I was the problem. Because I wasn't really there, I drove back in silence. No music, no radio, just the hum of tires on the highway and the sound of my thoughts getting louder. By the time I pulled into my apartment lot, it was close to 10. The building was quiet. The hall lights were dim. The air smelled like someone's dryer sheets and old carpet. I stopped in front of Chloe's door. 204. It looked the same as always, but it felt like a different world lived behind it now. I lifted my hand to knock, then froze. What would I even say? "Hey, sorry you confessed your love," and I stood there like a statue. "Hey, I went on my date anyway, even though my brain was still in your living room." My hand dropped. I walked into my place instead, and the quiet hit me hard. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing by the door with her heart on the floor between us. Every time I opened my eyes, I saw my ceiling and felt like I'd missed the moment I was supposed to catch. The next day, Chloe didn't come out. No wave at the mailboxes. No sound of her TV. No music through the wall. It was like she had disappeared. Sunday, same thing. Monday, same thing. By Tuesday, it was driving me crazy. I realized how much of my life had little pieces of her in it. The sound of her footsteps, the quick knock when she'd borrow something, the way she'd say my name like it meant something. Now it was all gone. That morning, I stopped at the coffee shop downstairs and ordered her usual, medium latte, oat milk. I carried it upstairs like it was something fragile. I set it carefully by her door. No note, no pressure, just coffee. Then I went to work, pretending I could focus. When I came home that evening, my heart jumped before I even hit the stairs. I walked straight to her door. The coffee was gone. The empty spot on the floor felt louder than any reply. She took it. She saw me. She just wasn't ready to see me. That night, I sat on my couch with my phone in my hand, staring at our old texts. Nothing romantic, nothing obvious, just two neighbors being two neighbors. Pizza? Movie night? I found your scarf. You alive? Med school is trying to kill me. I kept thinking about all the times she showed up for me, and how I never once asked myself why she always did. By Saturday, I couldn't take it anymore. I went downstairs, bought 2 oat milk lattes, and walked up to her door with my chest tight and my nerves on fire. I knocked softly at first, then louder. No answer. I knocked again. For a second I thought she wasn't home, and my stomach dropped. Then I heard movement, a quiet shuffle. A pause. The door opened just a crack. Chloe stood there with tired eyes and messy hair, like she hadn't slept right in days. She looked at the coffees in my hands, then at my face, like she was trying to decide if this was real or another thing she needed to hide from. "Eli," she said quietly. My voice came out rough. "I brought you one, and I brought me one, because I think we need to talk." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the door. Her eyes flicked down the hallway, then back to me. For a long second, she didn't move. Then she opened the door wider. "Come in," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "before I change my mind." The second I stepped into Chloe's apartment, it felt like walking into a room where someone had been holding their breath for days. The air was still, heavy. and her place didn't have that cozy warmth it usually did. The TV was off. The lavender candle wasn't lit. Her books were stacked higher than normal, like she'd been trying to drown her thoughts in studying. She shut the door behind me, slow and careful, like any loud sound might crack her open. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Her eyes were red around the edges, and her hoodie sleeves were pulled over her hands like armor. I held up the coffees like I didn't know what else to do with my body. "Peace offering," I said quietly. Chloe took the cup from me, her fingers brushing mine. The touch was quick, but it hit me harder than it should have. She turned and walked to the couch, sitting on the edge like she was ready to bolt. I sat too, but not close. I didn't want to crowd her. I didn't want to scare her back into silence. For a few minutes, we didn't speak. The only sound was the faint hum of her fridge and a car passing outside. I stared at my coffee lid like it had answers. Chloe stared at the floor. Finally, she whispered, "I hate that you came." My head snapped up. "What?" She swallowed, her voice shaking. "Not because I don't want you here. Because I wanted to be over this. I wanted to pretend I never said it. But now you're here and I can't pretend." My chest tightened. "Chloe, I didn't come to make this harder." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Everything about you makes things harder for me." That hit like a punch. Not because it was mean, but because it sounded true. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to survive her own feelings. I leaned forward a little. "I'm sorry I left the other night." Her eyes flicked up fast. Don't do that." "Do what?" "Say sorry like that fixes it." She gripped her coffee cup with both hands. "You stood there, and I felt like the stupidest person alive. Like I finally said the thing I've been choking on for months, and you just looked at me like I spoke a different language." Quote, "I swallowed hard. I froze. I didn't know what to say." She stared at me. "You went on your date." The way she said it, calm but sharp, made my stomach drop. I nodded, because lying would make it worse. "Yeah." Her jaw tightened. She looked away, blinking hard. "Of course you did. Why wouldn't you? You had a plan." "I was just the neighbor who got emotional." "No," I said quickly, my voice rising before I could control it. "You're not just that." She laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Then what am I, Eli?" That question landed between us like a brick. I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come fast. Not because I didn't have them. Because I didn't want to say the wrong thing and lose her. I took a breath. "You're the person I didn't realize I depended on." Chloe's eyes narrowed, like she was waiting for the part that hurt. "I went on that date," I continued, "and I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body. Haley was great. She was kind and funny, and she showed up. But the whole time, all I could think about was you. Not in a cute way. In a painful way, like my chest was too tight and I couldn't fix it." Chloe stared at me, her lips parted slightly like she didn't believe me. "I came home and I stood outside your door," I said, voice lower now. "I almost knocked. I didn't because I didn't know what to say. And then you disappeared, and it messed me up more than it should have." Her grip on the coffee cup loosened just a little. "So what, Eli? You felt guilty and now you're here to make yourself feel better?" I flinched. "No. I'm here because I can't go back to pretending you're just the girl next door." Chloe went still. Her eyes were shining again, but she didn't cry. She looked like she was forcing herself to stay steady. I swallowed. "I don't know what I feel yet. Not fully. And I hate that, because you deserve clarity. But I do know this. I missed you. I missed you so much that my apartment felt wrong. My life felt wrong, and I've been asking myself how I didn't see you, how I didn't see what you were giving me all this time." Chloe's voice came out small. "I gave you everything I could without crossing the line." Quote, I nodded. "I know." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not asking you to love me back, Eli. I'm not. I just needed you to know, because carrying it alone was killing me." I leaned forward more, careful, slow. "You didn't kill anything. You just changed it." Her eyes locked on mine. "Changed what?" I hesitated, then said the truth. "How I look at you." Chloe's throat moved like she swallowed something painful. And how do you look at me now? I didn't have some perfect speech. I wasn't that guy. So I said it the only way I could. Like you've been right here the whole time, I whispered. And I was too busy being comfortable to notice. Chloe stared at me, and for a second I saw her hope rise like a flame. Then she crushed it fast, shaking her head. No, she said. Don't do that. Don't give me hope if you're not sure. I nodded quickly. That's fair. Her voice cracked. I can't do half love. I can't do maybe. I'm too tired, Eli. Med school is already breaking me. I can't let you break me too. My heart pounded. I don't want to break you. Quote, You already did, she whispered, and the words made my chest ache. Not on purpose, but you did. I sat back, letting the silence sit between us. I didn't try to touch her. I didn't try to convince her with big promises. I just let her see me. After a long minute, I said, What do you need from me right now? Chloe blinked, surprised. What? I repeated it. What do you need from me, Chloe? Tell me. Not what you think you should need. What you actually need. Her eyes dropped to her coffee again. She was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, I need you to stop pretending this is nothing. I nodded. Okay. I need you to stop showing up only when you're lonely, she continued, voice shaking but stronger now. And disappearing when it gets real. That hit, because it was true. I swallowed hard. Okay. And I need to go slow, she finished, almost like it hurt to say it, because I'm not built to fall apart again. My throat tightened. We can go slow. Chloe looked up, searching my face. You mean that? I nodded. Yeah, I mean it. The room stayed quiet. I could hear my own breathing. Chloe's fingers finally relaxed out of her sleeves. She set her coffee down on the table, then looked at me like she was deciding something. If we do this, she said, we don't jump into anything. No labels. No big talk about forever, just honesty. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Deal. Chloe's shoulders sagged a little, like she was relieved and terrified at the same time. She gave a tiny nod, and for the first time since that night, her face softened. I missed you, she admitted quietly, eyes flicking away like she hated saying it out loud. My chest warmed. I missed you too. That was the moment the tension shifted. It didn't disappear, it just changed shape. It became something fragile, something new, like we were holding a glass thing between us and trying not to drop it. Chloe reached for the remote on the coffee table, her hands still shaky but steadier than before. You want to watch something? She asked, voice soft. It sounded like an escape route, and also like an invitation, a way to stay without making it bigger than she could handle. I nodded, grateful. Yeah, your pick. She scrolled, then landed on one of her favorite rom-coms. The opening credits started, filling the room with familiar music. Chloe tucked her feet under her on the couch, leaving a small space between us. At first, but halfway through the movie she shifted closer. Her shoulder brushed mine, and she didn't pull back. A few minutes later, she leaned her head against my arm. I went still, afraid to move the wrong way. Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. You can breathe, Eli. I let out a quiet laugh, more relief than humor. I'm trying. She didn't look at me, but her lips curved slightly. Good. We sat like that through the rest of the movie, close but careful. No kiss, no big moment. Just warmth and quiet, and the sound of her breathing next to mine. When the movie ended, the screen went dark. Chloe lifted her head and looked at me with tired eyes that held something softer now. Thanks for coming, she whispered. I didn't know how not to, I said. She stared at me for a long second, then nodded. Okay. It wasn't a promise, it wasn't a confession, it was permission, and somehow that felt like the biggest step we'd taken. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, staring at the ceiling like it might explain what I'd almost missed. The wall between my apartment and Chloe's was quiet for once. No TV, no footsteps, just that soft building hum you only notice when everything else is still. I checked my phone like an idiot, half expecting a message. Nothing. Then I heard it. A light knock on my door. Not loud, not rushed, just familiar. When I opened it, Chloe was standing there in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair still a little messy like she hadn't decided what kind of day this was yet. She held a paper bag in one hand, and her eyes were cautious, like she might turn and run if I made the wrong face. "I bought extra," she said, holding up the bag. "Breakfast burrito place. You always complain it's too far to walk." My chest warmed so fast it almost scared me. "You walked there for me?" Quote. She shrugged like it was nothing, but her cheeks flushed. "Don't make it a thing." I stepped aside. "Come in." She walked past me, and it hit me how normal it felt. Like she belonged in my apartment, like she always had, and I'd just never let myself name it. We ate on my couch, the burritos hot and messy, foil crinkling in our hands. Chloe picked off the tomatoes without thinking, then froze when she realized she was doing it in my living room like it was her place too. "What?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing. Just, this is weird." "Bad weird?" She looked at me, and her eyes softened. "Good, weird. Just scary." I nodded. "Same." We didn't talk about last night right away. Chloe asked about work, and I told her I had a job at a new build-out in Aurora. She told me she had a long day at the hospital and a patient who'd yelled at her for being too slow, even though she hadn't stopped moving all day. "You're not slow," I said. She stared at her hands. "You didn't see me. I dropped a chart in front of a nurse and wanted to crawl into a hole." I smiled. "That's not you being slow, that's you being human." Chloe's mouth twitched like she wanted to smile but didn't trust it. "You're really trying." "I am," I said, and it came out firm. "I don't want to mess this up." She set her burrito down and took a breath. "Eli, about Haley." My stomach tightened. "Yeah." "Are you going to keep seeing her?" Chloe asked, voice steady but her eyes were not. Her eyes were trying to stay brave. I exhaled. "No." Chloe blinked. "Just like that?" "It's not just like that," I said. "I owe her honesty. She didn't do anything wrong, but I can't sit across from someone and pretend I'm fully there when I'm not." Chloe's shoulders dropped a little, like she'd been holding them up for days. "Okay." I leaned forward. "And Chloe, I'm not ending it because you forced me. I'm ending it because I don't want to live half in. Not anymore." Her eyes glistened, and she looked away fast. "Don't say things like that." "Why?" "Because it makes me want to believe it," she whispered. I swallowed. "You can believe it. Slowly. But you can." Chloe didn't answer. She just nodded once, small and tight. That day at work, my hands were busy, but my brain kept drifting back to her on my couch, her feet tucked under her, her shoulders finally lowering like she could rest. I kept thinking about the way she'd said she loved me, like it was a secret she'd carried too long, and I kept thinking about the way I hadn't seen it, not because it wasn't there, but because I'd been lazy with my own heart. When I got home, the hallway smelled like someone's cooking and warm laundry. Chloe's door was closed, but this time it didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a door I was allowed to knock on. I knocked anyway. Soft. It opened almost right away. Chloe stood there in scrubs, her hair pulled back, eyes tired. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I said, holding up a plastic container. "I stopped for dinner. They gave me 2 by mistake." Chloe narrowed her eyes. "You're a terrible liar." I grinned. "I'm trying. Let me have this." She stepped aside, but her smile was real this time. "Come in." We ate at her small kitchen table. The lamp above it made everything feel softer. Chloe talked about her day, and I listened like my life depended on it. Not because I was trying to impress her, but because I wanted to know her in the way I should have been knowing her all along. Halfway through, she went quiet, staring at her fork. "What's going on in your head?" I asked. Chloe's voice was small. "What if this is just you reacting? What if you wake up next week and realize you don't actually want me like that?" That fear hit me hard, because I understood it. If I were her, I'd be terrified too. I stood and walked around the table slowly, giving her time to stop me if she wanted. I crouched next to her chair. "Look at me," I said. Chloe lifted her eyes. "I can't promise I'm perfect," I whispered. "I can't promise I'll never mess up. But I can promise you this. I'm not going to treat your heart like it's a question mark. Chloe's lip trembled. Eli? I'm choosing you, I said, not because it's convenient. Not because I feel guilty. Because when you weren't in my life for those few days, everything felt wrong, and I don't want that again. Her breath shook, and she reached out, fingers touching my arm like she needed to make sure I was real. I'm scared, she admitted. I know, I said. Me too. Chloe swallowed hard. Then why does this feel like it's going to ruin everything? Because it matters, I said simply. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, slow. Slow, I agreed. I stood back up, and this time I didn't reach for her. I didn't push. I just went back to my seat. But after a minute, Chloe reached across the table and took my hand herself. Her fingers were warm, a little shaky, but sure. That night, we sat on her couch again. A movie played in the background, but neither of us watched it. Chloe's head rested on my shoulder, and my arm rested along the back of the couch, close enough to hold her if she leaned in. Then she did. She tilted her face up toward me, and I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Her eyes searched mine like she was asking without words if this was okay. I didn't move fast. I didn't take, I asked, quiet. Is this okay? Chloe nodded once. Yes. So I leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle and slow, like we were both afraid of breaking the moment. Her hand tightened on mine, and that tiny pressure felt like a whole confession. When we pulled back, Chloe's forehead rested against mine. Her breath was shaky. I've wanted to do that for so long, she whispered. My voice came out rough. I'm sorry it took me so long to see you. Chloe swallowed. Do you see me now? I looked at her, really looked. Not neighbor, not friend, not comfortable routine, her. I see you, I said. And I don't want to go back to being blind. For a while, we just stayed there, quiet, our hands tangled together, the movie still playing like it didn't matter. Then Chloe pulled back enough to look me in the eyes, and her voice turned careful again, like she was stepping onto thin ice. What happens when med school ends? She asked. When I'm in residency and I'm exhausted all the time, when life gets messy again. I squeezed her hand. Then we do what we did this week. We show up. She blinked, and a small smile broke through. That simple? Quote. That hard, I corrected. But yeah, that's simple. Chloe laughed softly, and she looked lighter than I'd ever seen her, like she'd been carrying a weight, and finally set it down. Later, when I walked back to my apartment, I didn't feel that empty silence anymore. I stood in my doorway, looking across the hall at hers. For 2 years, we'd lived 10 feet apart, and I'd never known the best thing in my life was right there. Now I did. And the next time I had to ask, do I look okay? I already knew the answer, because the girl who loved me was finally letting me love her